I came across Mike Donio on X, on formerly known as Twitter, and he has an incredible story of adversity as a scientist, a deep dive into the cancer realm, and into more of the happenings of now. And this story is something that we got to be careful on how we use these different terms, but it is remarkable and one very worth listening to. Mike, man, I'm so excited to be visiting with you. Just learned a lot about your story through social media, especially X, Twitter, and the topics that you bring up are really ones that I think we all need to be aware of. And so, if you will, buddy, tell me a little bit about your story and how you became a would contrarian scientist be a good way to put that?
Yeah. So first, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity. And yeah, I mean, I think what you're talking about is that I kind of happened to fall into a situation that I never envisioned myself, especially as a scientist. So I've worked most of my 20-year career doing research in the lab and largely in industry, in pharma and biotech. And most recently, I was a senior scientist at a biotech company in the immuno-oncology space. And so this is leveraging the immune system to treat cancer, developing therapeutic antibodies to a particular target, and with the hopes of redirecting, engaging the immune system to target the cancer. I helped bring 2 antibodies to clinical trials, and that led up until about August, September of 2021, when the company rolled out a mandate, and like most of the industry, and I chose not to comply for a number of reasons, and they basically gave me an ultimatum, either do this and get compliant, or we're going to terminate you. I said, sorry, no, I can't do it. And they unceremoniously showed me the door. And since then, I've been speaking out. I kind of took it upon myself to try to make the best of a challenging situation. And I have 3 young kids. I figure this is a great opportunity to be a good role model and show them that, the power in doing something courageous and speaking out. And I've been blessed with the opportunity to do just that and speak out on a lot of different platforms, podcasts, radio shows, video, all manner of things, 40 plus interviews I think I've done. And I've also created, as you see behind me, this Science Defined thing as a solution.
I love that. There's a lot to unpack there, Mike. So first, you have been deep into the cancer world. Then that's obviously a huge part of my focus with my son having cancer, and that's a big topic that we go into. So that's something I want to circle back around with on you. But the other obviously we've got to be careful with how we word things because the video will get taken down. I've already been through one class as we navigate how we can talk about certain things, which is ridiculous. But these safe and effective choices that we were told that we had to take. My youngest child was in the womb, and Amber was forced to make this safe and effective choice, and so that's. She didn't work for a while after that, right? Because she was in a nursing home doing therapy, and so that blows my mind. So what is your take on that? How are we going to have to? I mean, as I look back on it, the rationale for trying to force a pregnant woman to take a vaccine is mind blowing. So how have you been able to rationalize that?
Yeah, now that I have been through all of this, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I have to say that I fell into the trap that a lot of scientists and people in kind of the mainstream paradigm tend to fall into. And just, I mean, I've always been skeptical of a lot of things, always been the type of person that's asked a lot of questions. And and pushed back on things. But at the end of the day, I I was busy with life and kind of overlooked a lot of things like those safe and effective things, um, and have come to really more deeply consider that now. I mean, my wife was pregnant 3 times or whatever, and yeah, we have 3 kids, and you know we just never we always thought we were doing the right thing, and even personally, and then along comes this situation, and it was the first time I kind of had to really deeply reflect on it and really researched it, with some intention, and it's completely changed the way I think about it. And I can't understand. I mean, although I guess on some level, I can kind of see why somebody might think it's a good idea. I mean, like we on the surface of it, of course, you don't want to put yourself or anybody else at any disordinate risk, and you certainly wouldn't want to risk the health of a baby. But what about the health of the mother and inversely the baby too, by subjecting them to something that is safe and effective, but um, and I just think it's something that we've become so accustomed with taking for granted as just something to do. And why would you question this? But when you really actually look at it, at what it is, it's hard not to say, like you did, like this. Why are we doing this?
Absolutely. And so my oldest, who had stage 4 cancer, we had a turned in, documented by his pediatrician vaccine injury. So what happened was, I believe it was the DTaP. Um, the bile was completely shut off to his liver. Okay, so
Mm.
whatever happened with this vaccine caused the liver to shut off bile, so his poop was chalk white.
Ah.
So you get on Google and you start looking at what does this mean, and that it terrifies you. So back to the pediatrician we went through all of that, and the solution, and I kid you not, and I get so aggravated with myself looking back on it, was, well, we just won't give them all at the same time. We'll just break them up. And I honestly, it didn't really set perfectly, but I accepted it because I trusted them to have the best interest. And so, fast forward, that was 2 years later, he has cancer. 3 years later, and we were going through all of this, and I'm told, your baby has a cantaloupe-sized tumor engulfing his kidney. It had metastasized to lymph nodes in his chest wall. So I'm thinking, what do we do? How do we incorporate? How do we go through this standard treatment and do everything we can? And what do you think I'm told? Nothing. They eat whatever you want. You live however you want. Nothing matters other than surgery, chemo, and
Mm-hmm.
radiation. And so, because none of that set well with me, started learning and going down these rabbit trails, and it did lead me back to there's a book called Dissolving Illusions that's extremely eye-opening around this topic. And so what made you start questioning it? How do you start getting that ball rolling to where you question what's going on with science that obviously you love? If you dedicated 20 years to doing this kind of thing, what made you start questioning it, Mike?
um for me, I don't think I can pinpoint like one particular instance, although I guess there were different things along the way that continually opened my eyes, or I think I've never been the kind of person that just accepts something given to me on the surface. I've always been like, okay, why is that? I want to know more about that. I want to understand. I've always, even as a young kid, my parents used to tell me, "You, Mike, you wouldn't shut up. You always asked questions, and then more questions. Like you just were so inquisitive." And I think I just carried that throughout my life, and have just, even as a scientist, which you would think, if you knew what, or if you have any idea what science is or it's supposed to be, like questioning should be a part of that. But although now we're not supposed to question science, so go figure. But I, as a scientist, always approached it from that point of, well, this is good to ask questions. And so I always, when confronted with something that didn't add up to me, I would ask questions and push back. And As I got further and further in my career, I just continue to see things that didn't add up. I mean, in industry, developing drugs and stuff like that, when you see how things are done, um, it's hard not to have raise some eyebrows and push back. I mean, you would think that because everything is approved by the FDA and all this stuff, and they go through all of these processes and all of these, millions and billions of dollars are invested into these things. That, well, it's got to be. I mean, they've got to know what they're doing. The science has got to be good. This has got to be safe if they tell me it's safe. But you'd be shocked to know some of the things that go on in science and in scientific research and in drug development. And just as I started to see more and more of these things, it just really got me thinking, like, what exactly has science become? Because this is not what I envisioned it as. And I know a lot of people that I've worked with have gone into it with good intentions of, I want to do something good with this, I want to develop better, safer drugs and these things. And more often than not, though, once you get into the system, you're just kind of eaten up, and it's like, wow, this is not at all what I thought it was. And then you're kind of confronted with, well, do I keep doing this because this is everything that I know and that I've been trained in, or do I make the decision to say something, speak out, and then that you're not going to be doing that any longer? And most people, unfortunately, decide to just kind of keep moving along because they don't want to give up the job and the career and the pay. And so, yeah, I mean, but as I went further and further along, just things that kept popping up. And then I've been confronted, with things in my own personal life, people that have had cancer and things that have caused me to look at how they were treated. I lost my dad in the end of 2018 very abruptly to pancreatic cancer, and seeing up close and personally his care, or I would really say lack of care, really opened my eyes, especially as someone who was deep in oncology at that time, developing cancer drugs, going to conferences, presenting my data and listening to what other people are saying and thinking I'm on the cutting edge of this stuff. And then seeing how somebody is being treated, it was just like, whoa, this is crazy.
It's crazy the parallels that get us kind of to very similar, ways of looking at it. On the cancer side, obviously, probably a very similar parallel to you on that. I'm so sorry about, your dad. That is way too common of an occurrence, really. The other thing is science isn't siloed into like just these problems are with cancer, right? So Alan Savory is one of the icons in the regenerative agriculture movement, and as a scientist in Africa, he led a team that culled like 40,000 elephants because they truly believed that the elephants were causing desertification. It was destroying the savannah and turning it into a desert. Well, as he started questioning that, because things didn't get better after they took out 40,000 elephants, they continued to get worse. Okay, so he will say, this is one of my biggest regrets in life is we killed all these animals for no reason, and that. As he came up with the solution, it was actually more animals, right? Was going contrary to what was being told in the mainstream science. He gets crucified, right? Like everybody's telling him, well, you're wrong. Well, why am I wrong? Well, because I said you're wrong. And so his big thing with the proof by authority is not proof. That's not scientific proof. And I feel like that perfectly parallels what you're saying. It's proof by authority. It works because somebody in a white coat said it works and it's fine. And so what is our solution? What is the science defined? What's that mission behind what you're trying to do that makes a better world?
Yeah. So, as I went and navigated the COVID pandemic and my kind of new life, in talking to people, I noticed two things. One, that many people, friends and family, and just people in the community really struggled with not just the enormous amount of information being fed to us, but the highly technical nature of the information. And, being a scientist, they would say to me, "Hey, Mike, what the heck does this mean? Can you help me understand?" And I found that I was able to kind of distill these terms and concepts and things, and really help them to make heads or tails of it, so they could make decisions instead of just having to trust what, the the news or the Faucis of the world were saying. And I thought that was really helpful. But the other thing that I noticed was that people were wanting to learn more and ask questions and enter into the discussion were being told, if they weren't scientists or doctors, like, "Hey, you can't ask questions. You're not a doctor. You're not blah, 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 blah. You're not an expert. Who are you to ask questions? Just trust what we're telling you," right? I think we've all probably heard that. And that just blew me away, because I was like, that's the most ridiculous thing. Now, I'm not expecting that everybody is going to want to or be able to go into a lab and conduct scientific research. That's not what Science Defined is all about. But I really firmly believe that anybody can learn at a sufficient level to understand science, to become conversant in it, such that you can have discussions, because I think it's so imperative that we all are empowered to do that, to ask questions, to go in search of information, to find sources that we can be confident in, to make decisions for ourselves and our families, like you did with your son. And, because we're, quite frankly, we're not always, and maybe now more than ever, getting the best information from the people that we previously thought we could trust in. And I'm not saying don't, stop trusting everybody that you used to, but I think we need to be able to trust ourselves more, because we have more ability than I think we realize. And we're so busy in the world. We've been so busied and so distracted that it's so easy to just offload that decision making and that to somebody else, that thinking. But yet it is so powerful to take that back. I think it can be such a transformative thing to learn how to understand that and be able to make those decisions yourself, as an individual, as a parent, or whatever. And so that was kind of what was behind Science Defined. And what it is an educational platform, that the goal being to help people to distill the complicated terminology and the concepts that we hear from doctors, scientists, and really the whole kind of medical industry, so that you can be your own health advocate, to distill, to make sense of complicated studies, things like that. So you can find sources that you can have confidence in, just more than just simply like learning science as an info download. I think when we think of a science class, at least for me, even in grad school, it was like you're just being thrown a tremendous amount of information with little to no chance to actually ask questions and think about it, to just, how much can I remember and regurgitate for the test or whatever. I mean, it's mind-boggling when you look at what education has become. I don't want to just, I'm happy to, and part of it certainly is the actual, what is science, what is biology, what are these things? But it's more than that. It's to actually show people how to think science, to learn how to learn science, if that makes sense.
It's absolutely incredible. So like in the world I've found myself in with this alternative and question everything, the term that I feel like you described without saying is decentralized. You have decentralized science. You have made it more accessible to be spread out and not controlled by this central narrative. And I think that's beautiful. I am so excited after you went through that, because that is incredible. Because I'm just a country boy from Arkansas, right? No, I have a petroleum technology degree and I got my EMT certificate. So like, I am not an educated person, but I find myself having conversations with doctors, all kinds of PhDs, masters in science like you. So what I have to do a lot of times is I have to get back. So when Jack Kruse tells me liberated vitamin A is an absolute disaster into your body, what is liberated vitamin A, right? Why is that different than retinol or what beta carotene? What are you talking about? So I think what you have done is you're going to be able to create a solution of decentralizing science, and I cannot wait to get involved with that.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Now I don't know, how far one person can go with that, but if I can at least by some chance plant that seed and people can see that that's something that we all can do, and that's something that's good, then that's great. I mean,
I I have found that when you put certain things out in the world, that it comes back to you. So like attracts like,
mhm.
iron sharpeth iron. I think that it builds on itself, and that's part of the magic behind the decentralization. And so that's wonderful. What is the biggest thing that you feel like you can kind of attack with your platform and with speaking, that the layman can understand and start incorporating? Because the first thing that came to mind as you were going through that, Mike, was healthcare, right? Like, I think that the first step of healthcare is actually self-care. It's like us taking care of ourselves. It's that autonomy of taking care of ourselves, not just outsourcing our well-being to somebody in a white coat. And so, what are your hopes with this? What's that first thing we can attack?
Yeah, I think healthcare is absolutely critical. I think we've lost um, touch with just how important our health and well-being is to our lives and our livelihood, and how much power we can have when we are truly healthy. And I'm not just talking about body, science, natural science, and medicine really just deals with and thinks a lot about the body. But I mean, we are, as humans, mind, body, soul. I mean, mind, soul, or body, soul, spirit. Sorry, I'm confusing myself.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're so much more than just the physical body, right? Um, and so but it starts really when you're healthy, and how you're approaching that really lends itself to that deeper health too. And in America, at least, we have become so unhealthy in our physical place that I think it's just bogged us down in those other places too. We Many people I know, I used to go walk in with just like in such a fog, and it's hard to really think about stuff. But when you get healthy and when you start to learn for yourself, I've gone on a kind of a personal health journey myself, where I kind of had some health issues and listened to what the doctors told me and took the medicine that they prescribed, and saw myself dealing with a lot of different side effects and things because of that, and other issues that resulted from the drugs. They weren't new, which is another whole thing. And once I finally said, you know what, I got to try something else, started using the same kind of research training that I was doing in the lab to look into things and say, well, are there other ways to go about looking at this? It kind of opened up a whole new path. And then I was able to find a doctor that would work with me on this, and was able to kind of get off all prescription medicines, change my diet completely, and take a whole new approach on my health. And through this experience this path I've walking with COVID and all of this, and since being pushed out of my job and my career, I mean, it's kind of, I've had a kind of spiritual awakening too. So it's been an incredible thing but I look at it very much as starting with my health and well-being, and getting control of your health. It's so powerful. We can do so much more. And I think people have just gotten sucked into this, like, well, I just got to accept where I am and what I'm doing, and I guess I might as well just enjoy it. And so, and we're in a state of, I was thinking about this the other day too. In the United States, we have this incredible disparity between, socioeconomically, between the rich and the poor. But at the same time, we all, regardless of where you fit in that, live in this immense abundance in this country, where regardless of where you are, you have almost unlimited access to food and things like that. And we don't understand how to I mean, forget about living in a time of limit. Like if that was all taken away, I think most people would not know what to do there. But I don't think most people know how to live in a time of abundance either and navigate that. We just go, okay, well, whatever. I don't have time. I know so many people that am friends with, and they're so busy, and so they just go and they don't think about what they're putting in their body and what that's doing.
Yeah, it's a big one. That the Emerson quote of the first wealth is health. Like we can't do anything when we're unhealthy and we're not functioning optimally. Like so much is just left on the table. Something you were saying earlier. I have found that medicine has become hyper specialized, right? And to the point to where the average person will have a cardiologist and just a, their primary care doc. They'll have all these endocrinologists and then they don't work together. It's mind blowing to me because it's like we're not these individual parts, right? We're this collection of a being, and I like how you put in the spiritual and the emotional side of things too. But like, where do you see the opportunity for bringing together a more of a holistic approach with science defined?
Yeah, I mean, that's so true that medicine and science too has become hyper compartmentalized, and I think it stems from the fact that it has trended toward taking this kind of reductionist view of the world and the body really, and so you wind up like just carving it up, and then you have these people that become ultra specialized. I mean, I look at myself as being very specialized just because I'm a scientist and that's what I know, but even within that, many of the people that I've worked with have become even more specialized. If you do a PhD or something, you're ultra specialized in that particular area. I mean, that's one of the reasons why it's so hard to step out of it, because you really only know this one thing and very well. I mean, even though people might pretend that they know everything, but they really don't. um, and so, yeah, I mean, we've just become accustomed to that's how it is. And I've got to go to these 10 different doctors. But I mean, I think we can all appreciate on some level that the body doesn't work. I mean, the heart doesn't work by itself. The lungs don't work by themselves. The kidneys don't work. It all has to work together. We have been, and I mean, in my belief system, we have been wonderfully created in a specific way, in such that it works together. It doesn't just, it's not this like piecemeal thing. One organ system to like, it depends on each other. So the most sensible way for me to approach it is holistically, and I think that's what science defined is learning how hopefully you can take that and gain a deeper understanding of how the body works part to whole, not just not just chopping it up.
I love that. I love that. So, what's that first step for somebody that's really starting to question the narrative, question what they've always believed? These dogma that we've been indoctrinated in is because what scares me is looking back as I'm looking through the cancer lens, and you start attacking nutrition and lifestyle, alternative therapies, things that you could do, maybe you should do, and then you have all kinds of opinions and no way to really gauge, is this the right path or not? You simply are having to trust somebody. Mm-hmm. And it seems like, it's kind of the same thing from just the, allopathic medicine. You're trusting somebody. So how, Mike, do we start being able to verify or validate some of these things that we're questioning to make sure that we are on the right track?
Yeah, I think it comes from gaining the ability to discern, and that's to have some insight, to be able to kind of develop some instinct to 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 understand things, to be able to compare one thing to another and say, is this is this relevant to what I'm doing? Is this person sincere in their approach? Is this, kind of, you need some basis to navigate you through all this, because like you said, it's so hard to understand. We come from a place, we've kind of been brought up to believe that we can trust in these authority figures and the man in the white coat or whatever, and now, if you're kind of starting to question things, it's hard. It's still hard to break free of that. I've noticed that there's a lot of people that I feel like have almost just gone from one set of experts to another. And, although I understand that, I think it's something to be aware of and be cautious of. So I want to be clear. Don't just trust what I'm telling you. I am not looking to just be another expert in any realm. I want to be someone that hopefully inspires and motivates you. And if my experience can help with that, then great. But I think it's can be very dangerous. This kind of, we don't want to turn people into heroes or bigger than they really are, because then it becomes that much easier to accept what they're telling us without inputting any kind of discernment and saying, does this really make sense? And I think we need to be hyper vigilant in discerning, in like staying on top of what we're being told and making sure it's really in our best interest or that of our children or whatever. So I mean, that's kind of how I would approach that.
I love that. I love that. So what big takeaway that I just got from there is the discernment. I mean, that's biblically speaking, right? So how do we? That's actually one of my preparers. Help me discern. It's like every day. It's like, how do I learn to apply this and make sense out of it to be applied by us? So how do we bring together faith and science? Because it seems to me probably overwhelmingly 80+% of the ones that are hardcore siloed in their science, the PhDs that are hyper siloed, seem to be the most agnostic. And I don't understand that, because in my simple country boy mind, it's verifies what the Bible says. It's not a contradiction. So how do you go through and process that?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking that, because it's definitely one of these things where I found um, a lot of people, even people that are in kind of the alternative space, are surprised to find that not only am I a scientist, but I'm a very strong Christian as well. And like, how does that jive? But I see it as, I mean, number one, what you say is very true. There's a lot of scientists that just, for whatever reason, even though there's it's not to say that all scientists are atheists or anything like that. There's a lot that are religious in some way. Although I think there's a nuance there between religion and Christianity, and what, I mean, there's a little bit more to unpack there.
Sure.
But on the surface, I think it's just, for whatever reason, a lack of revelation or awareness in terms of what this really is that you're looking at. It's so easy, again, to just look at science for science sake and approach it in our, in terms of what we've been told as fallen humans, and that we are, I mean, we're told, like, from the system and from science, that we're just animals and we're just no better than that, and we evolved from apes and all this stuff. And so people just, it's hard to look beyond that. It's just, this is just the natural world, and this is, again, science is focusing largely on the natural physical world and not really going beyond that. And so you don't see but when you start to look at scripture and stuff like that, what I've seen, I think what you're talking about, is you realize that these natural laws that we see throughout science that describe our world and phenomenon within that world really are God's laws. It's how he created the world, and that's what we're really looking at. And so when somebody says, how do you rectify science and religion, Christianity, God, I'm like, in reality, it's one and the same. And that I look at it as, as one is part of the other. I mean, of course, I put one on a higher level, but
Sure.
yeah,
Sure. It's definitely been something that I've tried because there's so many of these people that I respect and I think the absolute world of. I think they're brilliant and they're really onto stuff, but I just don't understand the blinders that it seems so obvious to me that it is one and the same. It is God's laws that govern how everything works, and we're never going to understand it completely. It's just what it is. So I love it when, again, that's what I was saying earlier. When you put things out, it comes back. I have also found that there's a lot more coming together that have the science. I want to understand how it works, but I also believe that it's biblically accurate too. And I feel like a lot more of that is coming together, which is really exciting. And I think that was maybe the biggest, silver lining to the whole COVID phase of life is this the awakening. It's bringing people together, and there's a physical and a spiritual awakening that seems to be happening. What have you experienced with that?
yeah. Well, I've definitely experienced both of those personally, and I think I've seen that in a lot of people that I know as well. I mean, it's definitely opened people's minds, um, certainly with the physical part, and I feel like maybe to some degree more than that. Although I feel like the people that I've encountered that have taken the bigger, bolder steps and have maybe sacrificed more with respect to their careers and things, more times than not, they, as I have it's they've been able to get through that by leaning into faith, by putting their faith in God, finding their faith, as part of the process. So I found that very interesting that that has played such a huge role in. I mean, granted, these are whatever people that I've connected with or that have commented on various posts that I've put out in X and other places. Um, and I just thought that it was just an interesting observation that, there's people that have spoken out and come out of different professions for certain reasons. But I draw a little bit of a distinction between people that were, I mean, yes, it was a choice, but we were also in a way forced out too. Um, and what it took to make that decision when so much is on the line. Um, I mean, it required faith. I mean, sure, it requires blind faith to go along and just acquiesce to what was happening, but it requires faith in something I think higher, um, to make that kind of leap, and to trust that when you make that decision, and if you're not going to have that job or that career or that income source or whatever to go back to, and you're going to have to carve out a new path, that it's going to be okay. And for me, I mean, I was shocked that it went as far as it did, and that they did actually go all the way through. I knew that it was possible, but I was shocked that they actually did follow through, and then how much it affected not just that job, but my career. And other scientists that I've connected with have said the same things, that, I mean, because of this, we're very much ostracized and kind of almost blacklisted from the industry. But I've just had this almost just calmness about it, that I know that it's going to be okay. And I think it's just, and I think a lot of other people that have done it or have made that decision have approached it in the same way and have been able to grow closer, with the Lord in the process. And I think that's wonderful.
I love that, my friend. I love that. All right. So, what do we do, in your opinion, in your take, to prepare for the next whatever's coming at us? Because I think that's the other thing. I just talked to Joel Salatin. So he's a
Mm-hmm.
farmer. He's Polyface Farms. He's a great dude. And we were talking about this the other day about, like, I think all of us can feel something's not right and something else is coming. So what do you think? What do you think that we can do to help prepare and to continue to be strengthened, whether that's, spiritually, or how do we do it physically? And what do you think we do to get ready?
Yeah. preparedness is definitely important, to an extent. I try to take a path of being as prepared as I can be, but also not being. Um, I was always the kind of Mr. Fix It kind of person where if something problem came up, I was like, how do I solve this and get in there and affect the outcome? But I found out that more often than not, I was actually causing more problems. So I've learned my big thing for this year, at least for me personally, is to learn to let go and let God, to kind of not be so hung on to the outcome, become more outcome independent. So I think there's a line there to walk in terms of being prepared, because another thing that I've said, which seems to resonate with people, is that you are your last line of defense. We truly, I mean, aside from if you believe in God and think like I do, like I feel like I have this, that the Lord is always with me in guiding my path, and I'm never alone. But at least here in this world, physically and with respect to your family or whatever, like you are your last line of defense. I mean, we need to approach it that way, and we need to educate ourselves, and that's why I think Science Defined is so important. So learning to understand this stuff, to be able to be equipped with those tools so that we can discern what's coming at us, and then taking that, and like I've said, I mean, I think it's so important. Someone like Joel Salatin, like to be able to find good sources of food, really nutritious, natural sources, is critical. I've found a farm, in the state that I live, that has, that practices regenerative farming and has these, all sorts of incredible pastured meats and things. And it's just been a wonderful thing for my family. So I would encourage people to go out and find those resources. Are all around us now. And so the more you learn about the way the body works, and, understand what the best things are to put in it to get out what you want, you can find sources to provide you with that stuff physically. And then if you're so inclined, um, and you're walking a path in faith too, I mean, I'd encourage you to strengthen that and go deeper there too. The more we can, again, protect ourselves, the better we are equipped to navigate whatever lies in front of us.
I love that, Mike. I love that. That goes back to the other side of it being like we're in this together, right? Like our farmers, our food producers, our market owners, the all of us are in this economy or community together. And so that's been one of my biggest things on trying to juggle how I recommend food sourcing. Is it regenerative or is it local? Like, what do we do? Well, I think local comes first because we can build a relationship from local and then help influence the direction. If we want it to be regenerative, which I'm extremely passionate about, we can help influence the farmer to go in that route, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so I think let's build that local relationship first. So I love it that you went there because it's such a big deal, and it's all tied together. So what does somebody do if they want to get more involved with what you're doing with Science Defined? What is that first step for somebody to
Yeah.
do?
Well, you can find me on X, at Mike Donio, or at Science Defined. You can go to sciencedefined.com, and that will kind of there. You can get more information there about Science Defined, what it is, and you can sign up for my newsletter, and in that you'll start to get a free weekly scientific term of the week, which will start to lay the foundation in the terminology, which I think is a key first step to start familiarizing with yourself with that. And I've laid out these terms in what I think is kind of a logical fashion, where they will should be in theory, like building onto to themselves, and then I'll start to put them together, in different ways. And but that just gives you a start. Like, how do I get started? Well, just starting to familiarize yourself with the terminology is a great way. And I go deeper than just throwing you a definition too. So if you want to know more about that, go to sciencedefined.com. I also have a free ebook that has a set of 10 terms to just, again, give you a start. They're highly relevant terms to kind of the COVID, this current situation that we're navigating. I understand that, people may have different interests or whatever, but so that's just more particular as here's a launching off point, or in the newsletter again kind of builds and gives you that foundation, and then I'm trying to do my best to create more and more stuff to further supplement that. But I think that's the best way to get going.
ScienceDefined.com. I love that. So, Mike, thank you so much for the time and your work and being able to be transparent, because that's looking back as we were going through everything with Lander, it was like that just sharing was almost therapeutic for me. It's like, hey, these are what we've learned, this is what we're applying, and this is how it could affect you, or you could apply that. And for me, it has been very therapeutic going through this process and just getting to meet incredible people that open your eyes to things that you otherwise may have had blinders on, or you didn't understand it. And so thank you for what you do, brother.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for what you're doing. I mean, the what you're bringing to people is incredibly important and valuable in these times. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Sowing Prosperity. Be sure to follow along across the social media platforms, including YouTube, and be sure to go to sowingprosperity.com.